All right, guys, I'll just kick it off real quick. Looks like we got six folks, 7 coming, so might get a couple more. I didn't have time to, shouldn't say I didn't have time, but I didn't have time to get a speaker or anything like that. So I thought we could do a general Q&A. Hopefully you guys, I know we've got 1 or 2 issues folks can bring. I've got a couple things I can share with some recent issues and some outcomes that I had related to rentals. I'll mute you if it does sound, if I get a bunch of feedback from you. But I guess, Kathy, I know you want to talk a little bit about evictions. Maybe just kick it off by letting you start and give a little bit of background and maybe have a little discussion related to your evictions. And you're currently muted. You're still muted, Kathy. There you go. I don't hear Kathy.
Maybe our.
Oh, perfect. There you go.
Oh, we're in?
You're in. Good.
Okay, good. Well, I can talk all night, but I could be very brief. So which do you approve? A lot of interesting details or straight to the point?
Now, give some details, some background. I think it'll probably be educational anyway for folks, especially if they rewatch this.
Okay. The first person we took to court was a young woman with very questionable living habits who wants to blame us for the roach problem that she has. And I talked to her about partnering with us, and partnering meant that we needed to hire a professional to come in and she could still continue to live as a slob. So she was behind 2 months rent, withheld her rent until we got a professional in. We did our own treatment, which is fine, but she wanted a professional. So we went to court, she got her professional, and she did pay us 2 months rent. So it was worth it. However, her slob habits have continued. I took a picture the other day. The downstairs tenant has to walk up beside her house to get to his mailbox. She's got debris all over the place. As far as I'm concerned, it's a trip hazard. Not very thoughtful of her, or not very considerate of her neighbors. So eventually we'll get rid of her. But that kind of burned me when the magistrate, his name was Holland Lewis, he said that, he had kids and he understood about mess. If you have dirty laundry on the floor all over the place, have food out. And if you have food out, what else? Just trash piled up. We found a big rat in her trash can. So her living habits are contributing to what's going on. And he dismissed all that. He said, I have kids, I understand. And that did not sit well with either of us. But anyhow, we got our money, and this month she got a professional in there. She got it treated, but she has not paid her rent, and it's the 10th. So I don't know what's going to happen with her.
Kathy, real quick, what was Holly Lewis's ruling? So did he basically say, you're going to pay the rent and you can stay, or what was kind of, because I assume the idea was that you were taking her to court to get rid of her, to evict her due to the fact that she was dirty.
Yes. He ruled in her favor. However.
Oh, it was worse than that, Kathy.
Oh.
He dismissed the case.
But
told the woman she had to pay if she wanted the bug treatment. So she paid, and we got the bug treatment done.
So we were not happy about that, but we did get our money. We still have a slob for a tenant. Okay, now, next case involved a dispute about work someone had done for us, and he also owes us back rent. And Holland Lewis was again the magistrate. but this time we felt he was more open to our side. He did rule in our favor, but he's giving the tenants 3 months to get caught up on the rent. And so far to date, they haven't given us any more money. This hearing was on the 1st, 10 days later, still no money. And we can't get them out until the end of January. So, well, I guess what we do, they are month to month. So at the beginning of January or right after Christmas, if they still haven't paid, we're going to give them 30 days notice. And then if they don't move out, we're going to get an eviction at the end of January. That's the best we can do. And I'm sorry he's allowing them to stay that long, but that's how it goes.
What was the rationale for him to allow them to stay 3 months?
No, he hasn't allowed them to stay 3 months. What he said was they need to pay in December and January. If they don't, he put in the file a writ of possession for the end of January. But so long as they pay December and January, then we need to allow them to see if they pay in February.
He's giving them 3 months to get caught up on their back rent.
Interesting. Instead of just giving you possession.
Well, if they don't show up with money on December and January, they're out at the end of January.
And they have a judgment on the record, which is good for us.
Right.
Yes. Now, our third case, we have a third case, and we're seeking advice about the third case. This is a young woman who had not a stable work history. She was coming out of the hospital. Her dad wanted her to live close to her in Dunbar. He was willing to co-sign on the lease. It started out fine. She paid her rent. Then it came down to her rent's $500. Then 1 month she paid $200. Then the next month she paid $300. Now this month, again, I've been communicating to them. I've been doing my part. I sent them to places where they could go and get help. I sent it to her dad. I sent it to her. This week they finally stopped answering phone calls. No communication. Then the neighbor downstairs said that the neighbors upstairs had moved out. So we went down this morning to assess what we thought would be a vacant apartment. No, it's not vacant. What this girl did, she offered, it was almost as if she was offering these people a sublet. She they gave her $100, and in exchange for that, she was going to get the water turned on. They have not done that. So here's this young couple there, hoping that we'll accept them, and they have no water. They can't even afford to put the water on. So we feel it's kind of an odd situation because the girl is no longer there, but she's allowed other people to move in. She never told us she was leaving. The dad couldn't even give us the courtesy of a phone call saying we're moving out. So in effect, it's being occupied, and these people are connected to her because they are her friends. So I'm wondering, can we get an unlawful occupation because she's allowed these other people to move in?
Have you tried to just go and be like, man, you guys are trespassing. You've got to leave. They have no utilities in their name. They have no.
Well, they have gas and they have electric. They don't have water. They go downstairs and bum water off of the tenant downstairs.
And I'll tell you something I do, because this might help get rid of them. I'd call the water company and tell them that you require them to have a lease before somebody can sign up water in their name. That way you avoid potentially allowing them motivation to stay. If they've got water, they got electric and gas, then they don't have as much incentive to leave. But if they can't get water, then maybe that'll help get them out sooner.
That's true. But I'm wondering what to do about the girl and her dad. Now, that's why I mentioned unlawful detainer, because they're gone. But in fact, they've allowed other people to come in. So as far as I'm concerned,
I would file eviction on her, the dad, and then unknown.
Yes.
And then I would serve all you need to do is serve one of those parties.
Right. We'll serve her dad because we know where he lives. She's
And then
gone off somewhere with a boyfriend.
And the reason I would name all parties is because one, the kids that got no money aren't going to pay you, but you probably don't even have their information to even know who they are, unless you wanted to say, hey, give me your information, we'll look at it, and just so you have their information in order to name them in the suit. Otherwise, they won't get this hit on their record like the daughter and the dad. Because all you need is one of them served to be able to go to court and for the judge to hear it. So,
right. Well, we were also looking at when we could get in there and really start working on the unit. We were evaluating that too. And apparently the girl has left the utilities on in her name. So
she'll regret that.
Who will regret that? She will?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, I think she deserves to have a little regret right now myself. I'm not feeling very sympathetic to somebody. I offer her assistance, how, tell her where she can go and what she can do. She does nothing. And the father, it's a kind of a sad situation because she was looking after her grandfather. The family was paying her to look after her grandfather. The grandfather sadly passed away. So she lost her income from looking after her father, her grandfather, and then her father had to take care of all the funeral expenses for the granddad. So now he has no money or interest in helping his daughter with her rent. I'm sure that that's what the case is. So
yeah, I wouldn't do unlawful detainment. And we were talking earlier, I don't know if anybody knows the difference between wrongful. So you've got two types of I call them evictions, but you've got wrongful occupation, which is you have a tenant that's not paying, there's with the lease, they're a holdover that they owe you money, so you file wrongful occupation. I think of unlawful detainers as I let my son move in with me. He's family. It's not that he's paying me rent, but he's staying in the bedroom and I want him out and he won't leave. So I'd have to file an unlawful detainer to get him out. I wouldn't file wrongful occupation because it's not related to lease or money. It's related to him maintaining possession. Or in the case, maybe you have a relative that died, you inherited the house, somebody's in the house, you need to get possession of the house, so you have to file an unlawful detainment because you don't have a lease. It's not a landlord-tenant kind of contract. It's somebody's living there that needs to leave that you've got to have a court tell them to leave. So you get a writ with an unlawful detainment too.
Well, maybe we did it wrong once, but we had a tenant who moved out without paying, but I knew where he lived. And I think that I can look it up, but I think we've got an unlawful detainer to take him to court for what the money he owed us. And he had the right to show up in court and he never did. So we got a judgment. So I tried to garnish his wages, but he took off to Texas. So it was a wasted effort. But anyhow, I used it in that case. It might have been not using it correctly, but nobody questioned it. And there was a court hearing and he didn't come.
Those are always the best court cases.
Yeah.
I was going to jump in and say, as far as the issues we're having with Lewis, he was the one that we discussed for the election that we needed to get him out, and we did. But I don't know what the date is. I don't know if it's January 20th, like President. I don't know when the switchover of old magistrates to new magistrates, but he did get voted out. So he will be gone soon, and we won't have to deal with him anymore. But he's the one that tends to look at the tenants as poor little tenants and landlord as a mean old landlord. So he very much seems to go on the side of the tenant. So we won't have to deal with him much longer, but he can do some serious damage, in the time that he has left. 3 months, that's unreasonable. The law says immediate possession.
And that's something too. I know we're going through weird times right now, and I never, even when I don't appeal them either, but if that was a case that would be something I think that you could appeal to circuit court We have, just like our tenants, they have no issue appealing a ruling to circuit for any reason. We have the same right. I never do it. I typically, regardless of whatever the magistrate says, I typically take it because I'm going to see that magistrate again. Now, maybe in Holly Lewis' case, you're going to potentially not see him again. So it may be something you could have appealed or thought about appealing.
Appealing, it costs us money.
Yeah, us money. Yeah. Now, in the case where they find for our favor, can we appeal? I'm assuming we could appeal that. There's no monetary, so you wouldn't. Yeah, but it would be your time, and if you hired somebody to go to court.
But I thought it was interesting. We got him twice in one court case, and then boom, there he is again. I thought that was interesting.
I think I've had 2 evictions, and he has not been the magistrate. So they still are rotating. But I don't like it when I get him. I felt like he was a community advocate more than a fair man.
Well, if we end up taking that girl back to court again, the one with poor living habits, if we're assigned to him, can we ask that we get somebody else?
It used to be before the COVID stuff, like when you would almost, when you drop off the papers, you could say, hey, who's the magistrate? It doesn't always guarantee it, but who's the magistrate scheduled for that week? And they'd tell you. And you'd be like, oh, maybe not this week. What's next week? They have done that before. I mean, I don't know how much they are supposed to do that, but they have done that. The magistrates know, or the clerks know their schedules, or at least what they've signed up for.
Yeah,
Worth asking.
I've done that in the past.
Yeah, but right now with the COVID, I have asked that, and they've said everything keeps getting all switched around, and we really don't know who's going to be the magistrate that day. I mean, there's so many changes constantly that they haven't been able to tell me here recently who the magistrate is going to be on the day of eviction.
Well, if we end up filing on that young girl again, I think that I will put in a written request that we have a different magistrate if we take her back again, because his sympathy towards her living habits was just not.
Did you break pictures?
Oh yeah, we have pictures.
Wow.
Yes, and the other day I went and took pictures of the side of the house where the trash can is. And there's a sidewalk there where the tenant has to walk up from the downstairs to walk up to get his mail. And it was littered all over the place. Toys, trash. There was no clear walkway. So she's, it's just not acceptable.
So is she under a year lease?
Yes, it's up at the end of April.
Could you, and I'm sure in your lease it's something you have terms about. I mean, it's a breach of lease for cleanliness or habitability on their side.
Yeah.
Could you not just give her, send her a letter, breach a lease, give her a 30-day notice to move?
I don't know whether we can do that or not.
I mean, is she fighting to move, or does she really want to stay?
All I know is she likes living the way she's living, and when the guy from pest control came in from Huntington, we asked him to please note things that would be detrimental to keeping pests away, and he wrote them all down. It's in the invoice. But she was there, and he also talked to her, and she wanted to argue with him about what he was recommending she do. So this is a young lady who wants to live the way she wants to live and is not really open to hearing another point of view. And it's not helpful when the magistrate supports that point of view.
Well, and the problem I have, Holly seems like a super smart guy. The problem I've had, my original problem was I had a lady very similar. I was evicting her. She showed up to court with the money, said, oh, honey, that's okay. You're paying the money. We're going to dismiss this. but he didn't factor in the late fees. He didn't factor in my choice of what, she already breached the lease, and maybe I didn't want to keep her. And I felt like he empowered her. So, so a month later, guess what I was doing? I was right back to court evicting her, and I got her out, and I got her evicted. And, it was just a waste of my time. I would have liked to have, even though she shut up and paid, that's great, but she'd already breached my lease, and I didn't want her because I knew she would be a problem, moving forward. Just like this tenant, sounds like you're in a duplex, right? At least more than one unit. So not only is she allowed to live triplex, live filthy in her own unit, she's most likely affecting the other units.
Yes, she is.
And that's the argument that I would also make is you're allowing her to live like this and affect 2 other families. So,
yes.
And you've empowered her.
Right. Yes. So
I would file again, and especially for non-payment of rent. But I would file it as breach of lease and non-payment of rent, because breach of lease gets you covered with it's not just about the COVID, unpaid rent. It's about you breached your lease for living that, filthy conditions.
well, I'm wondering whether we should wait till the beginning of January and file against her.
I would not do that because I think they're going to get slammed with evictions at the beginning of January. I would file immediately because they're going to get pounded with evictions in January 1st.
Because you can still file now as long as it's a breach of lease, and also for rent, for non-payment of rent. It's just they may or may not show up, and they may or may not provide an affidavit that they're required to do in order to, hold the step, hold the.
Yeah. We educated landlords know that, but most landlords here, there's a moratorium until January 1st, and they're thinking they can't file because most of them don't take the time to educate themselves, and they're not filing. Most landlords are not filing, and come January, they're gonna get slammed. And I would not doubt it if they don't extend this moratorium past January 1st or December 31st. I really expect that they're going to extend it. I really do.
And you guys may want to think about, maybe you guys need to think about month-to-month leases versus year leases. So.
Oh yes, we're starting to do that. And
that's something Al and Tori's always, preached in terms of what they do, and they've been happy with it. It's not a bad deal. I mean, that's not a bad option, especially these times. And if you get a problematic tenant, you're not stuck with them.
Well, the only thing you can't do is if there's Section 8, they have to be a year's lease.
Right.
But at least you're going to get your money.
Hey, I would like some input on one of my evictions. The property management company brought in a tenant who's been a disaster. She literally has not paid $1 since she moved in. She's HUD, so I'm getting a portion, but she won't pay her portion. When they went to serve her, they would open the curtain, see that it was a maintenance guy, and close it back because they knew they were going to get served. So we had to then go back and do the publication. Our 30 days is up on the publication, so I asked the property management company to file the paperwork for the default judgment. Once I get that, would you guys go ahead and go to move them out immediately, or would you wait that 20-day appeal period before you tried to force them out? What I'm scared of is they're going to go in and try to appeal.
I would force them out because I've had them multiple times that they allow them to appeal after that 21-day period. And the circuit judge will hear it. They'd be like, now, why? It's very problematic. I would execute that the day it became active and let the court, they'll either do it or they won't. So at least you know what they're going to do if they appeal it.
Yeah. And they're going to cry and whine that, we didn't know we were getting evicted. I'm like, you saw the guy come and try to serve you. multiple times and you opened that curtain and closed it back because you didn't want those papers. They know how to work the system. They absolutely know how to work the system, and they're going to do it. And I'm scared of what they might put me through. Now, thank goodness at this point, HUD is paying a decent portion, so I'm getting some income off of it. I just cannot stand that they're taking advantage of this and not paying a dollar. You know, they just have not paid anything. And they've got it, you know, they're slobby and like the yard's full of stuff. It's a mess. So they filed not just on non-payment, but they filed on, you know, they were smoking in the house and that's prohibited. I don't even allow smokers. I don't just allow no smoking in the house. I switched over to a policy of anybody new coming in, you can't even be a smoker and rent from me. And, you know, so they marked on their applications that they were non-smokers and they're in the house smoking. So we filed, you know, not only on non-payment for breach of lease for that stuff. So
I would absolutely file the writ the day that you're allowed to file it. From my experience, they're either going to fight it or they're not going to fight it. So,
yeah. Okay. Well, tell us your story, John, on your issues, whatever your issues were.
okay, I've got some non-eviction related stuff. I think I mentioned this a couple months ago. I had a lady that new tenant that she fell through one of my deck boards, and a week later scratched her leg. A week later had an attorney suing me, so you know the attorney sends a letter to me demanding everything that I own. You know.
Oh,
And,
wow.
you know, so the insurance takes over, and so what was interesting, and I wasn't like this when I first started, and this is why it's kind of a sharing thing. Like I've gotten much better about documentation, pictures, and work orders. So I had everything related to the incident. It was in July, and I had pictures. I had timelines of what happened, communications between my folks that talked to her, but more or less had everything kind of in line, provided it to the adjuster. And the attorney went back and forth with the adjuster, making demands. And basically that they were saying we denied because, and the circumstances was, it was a place that she was aware that was the problem. So she reported it. We documented a work order, told her to stay off of it, and told her when we get time, we'll get back to it. And the way that the insurance was able to deny it is because she had plausible. It wasn't a common area she had to walk through to get in the house, and it was an area on the porch that she was aware of, which means by her going back to it, falling through, she put her own self in peril. So. And they were able to make that argument. And so the lawyer fired her after they went back and forth. The attorney just sent a letter stating that they would no longer be representing her as a client. So kind of just interesting. And that stuff, you guys, I've been doing this maybe 15, 16 years now. That's the first time I've ever had to deal with that. But I will say that I cannot encourage enough about, you know, keeping tenant communications, keeping documentation of the work you do at the places. You know, of course, she claims that not only did she fall through, but we're never doing anything to the house. Well, of course, I've got work orders of everything we've ever done to the house when they moved in, pictures of the place. Then she was claiming that we knew that the deck was bad, and we knew that there was a board. We had pictures of, you know, when they moved in, we had a lease where they signed that there was no issues. She was saying, well, we told them about the deck when we moved in 7 months ago. Well, then I pulled out a lease and said, here's her walkthrough of the unit where she accepted it. And here's the issues that she added to the lease where she had an opportunity. And I can't tell you how important I think that is for you guys. If you're going to rent to people, you've got con artists out there. And those folks, you know, that is their job, is they look to beat us, you know, But that's the first time I've had an issue like that. It was very educational. I talked to another landlord that had something similar. Their insurance ended up settling, and it was just a ridiculous. That some guy stepped on a step, it broke, and had tens of thousands of dollars in damage, from stepping. It's insane. But unless she finds some other low life, bottom feeding person to come after, at least I know, at least that I got a little resolution on that. So, but it's something with the shares, you guys got to be cognizant of the people out there and document everything, because they will come after you eventually.
Yeah. I video the entire house before somebody moves in, and on the video I verbally say the address, the date, this is before, and I give the names of the people moving in. I go through and video the whole thing. I show where every smoke detector is, every fire extinguisher is, any damages. I point out any damages that are existing. And then I post that to a private YouTube. I do it private so nobody can see it, but I post it privately on YouTube. So if there's ever an issue, I can pull up that YouTube video and say, this is what it looked like when you moved in. And then when they move out, I video again. This is, what it looked like when you moved out. Sometimes I have to go back to the original video because I'm like, was that like that when they moved in? Like, I didn't put it on the move-in sheet, but was it like that? So I have to go back to that original video and watch sometimes. But as far as documenting maintenance, if you guys, I encourage people that even have specific properties to use a property software, because you can do work orders. They can submit maintenance requests through that. You can do your work orders through that, through these apps, the various management apps. You can take pictures of the items, specifically write in there what you did. Like, all the documentation runs through that property management software, and then you have full documentation of anything you've done anywhere. Because you do have to just cover your ass, because everybody's out to make a buck from, somebody else just scamming them.
Well, and I'll tell you something else that helped. We had a text message between her and one of the guys that works for me, where she stated, hey, what's the update on fixing the porch? And him replying back, because, of course, when she came to sue me, she had no knowledge of that porch. She had no knowledge of that porch. And so she was clearly lying, and they had proof to show her otherwise, which is great. But those texts were wonders for me. Whereas people talk on the phone, you don't sometimes get, other than he said, she said, but I like when tenants text, and I like when tenants, put messages on their portal and all that, because to me, if there's ever a problem, it's something easy to go back to. I may not have somebody working for me that talked to them at that point, because they can come back on us a year, 2 years, whatever I don't know what the period of time is, but there's definitely a period that you want to keep all this information in case there ever is a problem.
This is a bit of a sidetrack related to that, but if you guys ever file eviction on somebody, do not take phone calls after that. I require, it's right in my, eviction stuff. If I file eviction on you, there is written communication only from that point, because tenants will say, you said, they said, whatever, and I will not talk to anyone on the phone once I file eviction. It has to be email or text.
That's a good point. I like that.
I mean, I tell you, text messages are some of the best documentation that easy to do and captures the context of everything. So I haven't met too many tenants that don't text. I do have one or two, but they're very small.
I remember.
Hey, John,
Go ahead.
go ahead, Kathy.
Well, I just wanted to
Anyway,
say that was very helpful, a text. We had a tenant who was online on Facebook complaining about our neighbors. and her neighbors were very upset that she was being public about her unhappiness with them. So she gave me notice that she was moving out, and she did it in a text. And I thought, well, that's good. This problem is going to be taken care of. Then she came back and said they wanted to stay. So what I did is I took a picture of the text and on my phone, and I blew it up and I mailed it to her, and I said, we are honoring your 30-day notice. We expect you to be out at the end of 30 days. And it worked.
Nice.
So that text business is really helpful.
Hey, Kit, you were getting ready to say something?
Yeah, along those same lines of people, wanting to take advantage of a situation, we might want to think about future, maybe a point of interest is maybe asset protection. Heaven forbid you would have a fatality or something like that. I think that would be a good topic to cover because sometimes, if you're sued for millions of dollars, you're not going to have enough local insurance, or, might be something to think about.
Does our LLC that we think's protected us, does it truly protect us, kind of thing?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, no, and if anybody has any attorneys that they have used that they feel are competent, I know when all this pandemic talk came and people were talking about tenants not having to pay, I had a couple folks that were talking about reaching out to attorneys and trying to figure out how they can't lose everything, So if there's any attorneys that you guys have dealt with or have any ideas, I'd be happy to reach out to them, or if you guys want to reach out to them that would be a good topic. I know we've had attorneys in the past. Maybe this is a more important time to focus on asset protection, structure, how we're structured, how they recommend. I know we've talked about that past, but I think that's a good idea, Ken. So we definitely could find some, have any ideas, let me know.
I asked Mark Slotnick about that probably 6 months ago, and he did not really do that. So I'll reach out to him and ask him if he has a recommendation for who would be good at that, because I truly don't know who does that. There's some national lawyers that I know of that do it, but I would much rather have somebody local.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, there's a lot of YouTube videos on that. So if you want to just Google it on YouTube, you'll find a lot of information.
I've heard people talking about setting up separate LLCs for each house, each location, which to me would be astronomically expensive, not only to maintain, but to keep on top of in terms of the required filings every year. So,
yeah,
well, the national company that I was looking at, they file your stuff in other states, because there's some states where you can file kind of a main LLC, and then you file these sub LLCs, and then your sub LLCs all fall into your main LLC. So you do your taxes and all that stuff based on the one LLC. And it's private. In those couple of states that allow it, it's very private. You can't even figure out who owns that LLC. So I was looking at a national company, because I was like, okay, if we can't do that in West Virginia, then maybe I do start titling my stuff, my LLC. Maybe I do start running my LLC through another state that allows it. But I didn't get far enough along in it to see if it was going to make sense for me.
I know Nevada is one.
Yeah, I think Texas and Florida, it seems like, were other ones. Nevada, it seems like people that do some shady business, they run their businesses through Nevada.
Yeah. But yeah, they have blind trusts and things like that.
Yeah.
That's another thing I've heard that is a good way to hold your property is in a trust. And then if you are sued and it would overcome your insurance, it may protect you because it's a something that's already set aside. That's the trick to being, if you're ever sued, is if you're not worth anything, they're not going to waste their time
Right.
other than the insurance.
And hopefully having enough insurance to protect you, that it's enough. But I agree. You never know what could happen on somebody get injured, killed, or gosh, that family of 6 that died in that one house fire. That was
Oh yeah.
That's huge liability.
I wonder what happened to that landlord.
Oh no, I never did actually hear any results. I know it was I'd heard it was an Erie insurance, and they had paid out quite a bit, and there was a lot of suspicious stuff obviously related to it, but I never heard the actual outcome of it. That'd be worth maybe even following up just to know. Zell had seen his hand raised, but go ahead, Jennifer, before you do, Zell.
I did see that landlord had receipts for somebody coming in and putting in all the smoke detectors on. She had receipts to prove there were smoke detectors in that house. The tenant had, like we see all the time, the tenants had taken them down.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that she didn't lose that suit or that, claim, because if you have a bunch of people die, then they're probably going to rule against the landlord, even if the landlord wasn't at fault, because this poor family lost all these people.
Zell, you had a question. I can't hear you. For some reason, your audio is not coming through. Am I the only one not here? Does everybody not hear?
He could type in a message, couldn't he? Type a message to everyone.
If you want to type a message, I can translate that. For some reason, your audio is not. You're unmuted, which is, you should be able to talk. It's just not picking up anything. Well, he works on that. Any other issues? What else is going on with you guys? How's tenants been paying for you guys? I've got several late, kind of making payments, but I'm definitely starting to see getting more and more people kind of late and not paying. And so to me, I feel like the longer this goes on,
Worse it's gonna get.
yeah.
Yep.
Oh, I like Zell's comment. This is good. That's good. So the way that you avoid them coming after your properties is borrow from them so there's no money in them. Amen to that. Absolutely. There is something to be said for that. So
then if you borrow from them, how do you hide the money you borrowed? What do you do with it?
That's for your what do they call that?
Offshore account.
Offshore account. Yeah. LLC, he said too. And that's, I use LLCs. I use them. I group my properties by LLC, but my intent is to have an LLC that is self-sufficient. So I need to have enough units in an LLC to pay the taxes, insurance, and maintenance as a group. So maybe 20 or 30 properties in each LLC. That's about that's about as far as I go, in terms of trying to be, and I treat them as separate companies too. They're their own entity type thing. How did the rest of you guys do it? I mean, does anybody keep, and Zell's saying also make sure it's real, have meetings actual corporate meetings and things. So it's not just a fictitious thing. It's something that's real. And I treat my LLCs as they're independent. I don't mix stuff. I don't. How else do you guys do it? Does you
How
guys?
many LLCs do you have, John?
I keep, I think like seven total, 7 or 8, which are manageable to me, in terms of families. I wouldn't want to get much more granularity, than that.
And so how many properties do you have in each LLC?
It depends. Some I've got a little bit more than others, but typically about 25 to 30, 35 in each roughly. There's some that have more, one has like 68 in it or something, 66, something like that. Dale was also saying a lawyer landlord instructed him about that, about the LLC and the leveraging your properties. So a little bit more credibility to that. How do you guys do it, Kathy? Do you guys keep one LLC for all properties, or do you keep them as individually owned?
Well, we went to a meeting once, and this woman, it had to do with where you go out and you generate interest in properties that are going to be repossessed, and you try to get buyers for them, and it was a real estate education class, so it was interesting. But after that, I had a bipulmonary embolism, and that was the end of that. I couldn't get the energy for it. But anyhow, the woman who was there said every single property we should have a separate LLC. So I discussed that with my son, and he says, "Mother, that's not realistic. Can you imagine if we filed a separate tax return for each property?" So we just have one, and maybe we're being foolish, but we have enough trouble getting our act together for our taxes.
I understand.
I agree with him though. I think it's too cumbersome to have a separate LLC for everyone, because you're talking about then separate insurance policies, on every single property. And I don't know. I have one LLC, and that's the way I'm doing it. I've only got 40 some properties. So if I had hundreds, maybe I would group them in like John does with 20 to 50 or something. But with 40 some, I'm doing one, and I'm not going through the separate policies. I'm just not. But
you start to get savings, like even like just talking about, like, if I had an individual policy per property, it would cost me more in insurance than if I have a commercial policy that has a group of properties. So you start to see, at least for me, from a cost savings, I get benefits having them grouped, but that 30 or so, and I can have one policy and have multiple properties, and my cost per unit's much less than if I do an individual policy. Now, there are advantages. There's some landlords I met, they won't do anything but individual properties per location, because if an insurance ever cancels them, they cancel them at the location, not, where I have a policy, and if I had a bunch of fires or claims, then they could cancel me and cancel I've got to all of a sudden go find 20 or 30 properties insurance. Whereas the person that has one policy per, they're just canceling that location. So, I mean, I can see either or. I always look at it as a numbers. To me, I can save by having multiple and having everything kind of tied like that versus doing everything individually. I couldn't imagine having to file that stuff individually too. I mean, it's bad. I mean, look what the state takes from us just having one LLC. Per LLC, you got to pay that fee every year, turn them in. It's just depending on how you file your taxes too. If you do a business tax, gosh, that would be insane.
can you imagine the money you would have gotten through the CARES Act though? Each business gets a $2,000 grant. That would be nice.
Or not. Yeah. Did anybody, I wanted to mention too, we were talking last time about the City of Charleston grant for the exterior of your buildings. I don't know if anybody's looked into that, but that application, it had expired I think the end of last, but they've updated it. So if you'll get onto the City of Charleston's website, they've got a new one you can submit, and it ends December 31st, I think. So if maybe something worth, if you're thinking about doing some exterior work, it's got some guidelines. You have to get it approved first. It has to show pictures and then, you know, what it's supposed to look like, but it's supposed to cover exterior stuff or internet upgrades. And supposedly it's the money that comes from the water settlement that they had gotten. So this is one way that they're spending some of that money. So I don't know how successful we as landlords would be to get that, but I pay B&O, I pay, you know, for each one of those. So I have a building that I haven't gotten to yet that I want to do exterior stuff. So I'm going to try to submit it. And if look, it's up to $5,000, but I have to spend $20,000 to get $5,000, if that makes sense. So no matter what I can spend, I have to spend at least 20 to get 5. And you know, it has to be exterior windows, doors, or internet upgrade related. So I definitely, I'll happy to share a link or send it around. But if you'll just go to if you have property in Charleston and have your, you know, your B&O license, you qualify per what I've read so far. And if you go to the City of Charleston's website, there's a link right on top that you can, you know, click and review and see if it's something of interest.
Mhm. And if anybody has not applied for that CARES Act money through the state of West Virginia, time is running out. I don't recall whether the deadline is the 15th or the 31st, but the deadline is coming up quickly on that CARES Act money. So apply quickly if you have not already.
Are you talking about the economic the EDI, the injury?
No, that's federal. This one's the state one, the state grant money.
Oh, did they extend it? They extended, so I thought
No, this was the state one has always been now, you know, running out now.
5,000.
If you don't have employees, like I don't have employees, or I didn't, I do now, but I didn't. So it's $2,000 per business if you don't have employees, and I think maybe it's 5,000 if you do. I know there's a difference between there's a $2,000 and a 5,000. I think the difference was having employees. I'm not sure, but I was getting 2,000.
Was you successful at it?
Yes, I got it for Samadhi. And then I applied for Old World and for Affordable, but I literally didn't file a 1-month sales tax form in December of 2016.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, nobody ever let me know about it, but so they wouldn't issue me a letter of good standing. So now I have to go in and file this form for a 30-day sales tax form from 2016. I have to file that on Monday, and then they'll issue me the letter of good standing, and then I'll get it. I'll get it for the affordable cleanup, and then Old World. I've submitted what I need to submit, and I'm just waiting now. It's been approved. So I'm waiting on money for that company. I didn't hear you.
When does it expire to be able to apply for it?
It's either the 15th or the 31st.
Okay.
I don't recall which one, but it's coming up really soon. But you have to get a letter of good standing. So you've got to go in to a website. It's like WV taxes something or other. You have to go into that portal and get a letter of good standing to be able to get your money.
And just the requirements are a licensed business and even for the sole proprietor.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
any landlord that
I believe so. I believe so.
should qualify for the $2,000 without, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, you have to have a company, so I'm not sure. Like, if it's somebody that's just kind of doing business with their own name, I don't think you could get a letter of good standing in that case because you don't have a business, you know? So I am not sure. I'm not sure if a sole proprietor that doesn't have a business license, I'm not sure if they'd be eligible for it or not. I don't know.
That's the key, is that you apply for your business through the state and you've got a business license number.
Yeah, I believe so.
I applied under one that I have employees, and I've got the one, but I didn't apply for the holding companies for the rentals. So that'd be something. I
Do
thought-
that.
Yeah, that's free. That's free money. I mean, unfortunately.
Yep.
Do you guys, and that applies to each and every person on this phone call. If you have rentals and you've applied for a business license, that is your qualification to apply for this. If you, even if you don't have employees, that's at least is it 2,000 or 2,500?
2,000.
It's definitely something worth. Would anybody like for me to share links? I'm going to look at that again on the individual ones. I can happy to send a link around once I look into it.
Yeah, it'd be good to share it, even because there's a lot of people not on this call. So yeah, it'd be good to put that up on the Facebook group.
It's definitely free money. So
Paul put up there, the Charleston real estate market is very hot. Has this impacted anybody's occupancy numbers? And I just need to clarify, when he say real estate, does that mean people are buying instead of renting? Yes, he's nodding, yes. We've had a high turnover, Paul. Some of it's directly related to COVID, but I will say this, we've had plenty of people show up and to be interested in our properties when we've rented them. So I don't feel that there is, I think if we had another property ready tomorrow, we'd still have people coming and be interested. Now that's just my perspective.
Yeah, I'm 100% occupied right now. I'm not having any issues.
I think I've got about 4 or 5 total, but I haven't sat on any for too long. So it feels a little slower to me of lately, but I'm trying to be a little bit more pickier because I'm afraid I can't get rid of some people, rather than taking a chance, so.
Holidays, things tend to slow down.
Yeah.
But I was very surprised. We had one unit we rented and I was showing it all around Thanksgiving and people were coming. I mean, I was really surprised. And I will share with this, I had not used Facebook Marketplace before, but I used it for the first time and probably had about 60 people contact me.
Oh, wow.
Now, of course, probably 30 to 50% said, is it available? And I'd say yes, and that would be the last I heard from them. But I was using Zillow at the same time, and my response on Facebook Marketplace was much higher. I was really taken by that.
Yeah, I'm going to start. I haven't done as much on the Facebook Marketplace as I've done on Zillow, and I felt like my stuff's starting to slow down, and I was looking at other stuff to try to garner some more interest. So that's good to know. Any particular site that you like to use, or that you find that you've had more success at on the Facebook sites? Is there anything you did that helped?
I just do the Facebook Marketplace. I don't even do going into the Facebook yard sale sites and the rental groups and all that. You don't even need to do that. Just put it in the general Facebook Marketplace. You will have more responses than you ever want to have.
Okay, but you can even.
I used to go into all the groups and post it then into all the groups, but I don't waste my time doing it anymore. You don't need to.
You feel like you get it. Okay.
But I want to tell you something kind of cute. We have one tenant who's been sending us leads from Facebook Marketplace for all the different yard sale groups. We got a free toilet through her lead. Now she was sending us information on a stove. I thought it was kind of interesting.
Good. Use your boots on the ground.
Yeah.
Now, I think as landlords, if we don't embrace the technology, you'll get left behind, because I can't imagine trying to manage or market or deal with tenants without technology. I can't fathom how these guys back in the day did it. So without text messages, email, electronic payments. By the way, we talked about electronic payments. Anybody had any success with using electronic payments or looking into it anymore? Did anybody make any success with it?
I got a brand new tenant who wanted me to use PayPal, and we had some reservations from PayPal because of a prior tenant. It just seemed like there was a lag in time. So I just said to this tenant, go on your phone and look for an app called Zelle, Zelle. And he did. He downloaded it and he paid me on the spot.
Nice. Yeah, I like Zelle. Zelle's good. It's instant and it's very quick. Cash app. You just have to watch out that once you move a lot of frequent transactions, they'll classify you as a business and start wanting to charge you a processing fee. But, you know, the way you can think about the processing fees are, you know, if you have somebody that pays you and it's instantaneous versus them mailing you a check, you having to go to the post office, you having to deposit it, to me, a lot of these fees just part of doing business. I mean, you're either going to pay it as part of the fee for the money, or you're going to pay it in labor or your time to go get it and deposit it. So,
Right. Very true.
well, guys, we had an hour discussion. Is there anything else you guys would like to talk about? I mean, a couple takeaways, maybe send out a couple links. One was the link for the individual, check on the status of that individual application for the CARES Act to see if it's still open. I think Jennifer was saying either the 15th or 31st. Send a link around to you guys to look at least explore, because it sounds like most people would qualify. It's worth your time if $2,000 is worth your time for a grant. We talked about asset protection. If you guys have any ideas or follow-up, send me or Jennifer about any attorneys that might be interesting to provide some guidance to us for future stuff. I think that'd be a good topic, good meeting. And that's it for me. Did anybody have anything else they want to discuss before we end the call?
The last meeting, was it recorded? Because I missed the last meeting.
Yes, it was. Jennifer, have you posted that one yet?
It should be. I'm 99% sure that it's on the WV Landlords Association.com. You have to log into the site, but once you log in, you can click on past Zoom meetings and see all of the meetings there.
Okay, good.
I was just going to double check. It is there, Kathy.
Okay.
You did post it. Thanks, Jennifer.
Yes, thank you.
Anything else, guys?
Always good to talk to everybody.
Yeah, I enjoy everybody. Have a happy New Year, a Merry Christmas, and good luck in collecting and keeping your business afloat during this pandemic time.
Yes. Hope we all keep floating.
What, floating is much better than sinking.
Oh boy, you said it.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Okay.
See you guys.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.